This will provide us with improved comprehension of what transpired in between them. The ascent of Al Pacino as and the texture of an actor from the late 1960s SoFan account concerning perseverance, timing, and a nearly unyielding faith in craftsmanship. He ended up at the Charles in 1967, Boston's Playhouse, offering performances in Otis's Awaken, Sing by Clifford and America Hera by Jean-Claude Van Italia, for the first time in his life, making $125 from performing, and it seemed to him theatrical life. It was not merely it served as confirmation. The theater was where he got to know young Jill Clayburgh. Actress with intelligence and warmth, matched his agitated drive. Their 5-year romance, a partnership started in the stage's lights and transported them to New York, where they both wanted to make something enduring. By 1968, Pacino assumed a position that would announce he is quite talented. Israel the Indian Wants the Bronx by Horowitz first appeared at the Astor Place Theater, and Pacino played the wiry character, MURF. Hostile homeless youth. The production played and performed 177 times. In addition to Horowitz's its title, Theckleberg was featured in Sugar Plum. Theron was a crucial triumph. Pacino's Unfiltered, he received the Obie Award for his performance for Top Performer. The winner of Best was John Cazale. Supporting actor as well as Horowitz received a prize for Best New Play. However, the impact of the output reassured. One of the audience's male members was Martin Bregman, the man who would eventually Pacino's supervisor, and in many respects Thea's career's architect. Bregman observed a young actor's quest for something and urged him to take on positions that would subsequently establish an era. The paternal figure, Dog Day, Afternoon, said Pica. Pacino frequently admitted that meeting Bregman changed his course indefinitely. The same Pacino went with the Indian this year. Desires to travel to Italy with the Bronx, playing at Spalto's Dei du Mandi festival. It was the first time he had visited his heritage, and he frequently thought of the excitement of performing for Italian audiences, a turning point in his early professional life. Returning, he and Clayburgh proceeded in New York. The effort made by young performers to continue to float. Both of them showed up in a non-episode of the TV show, Nipped Now as The Deadly Circle of Violence, broadcast in November 1968. Additionally, Clayburgh laid a consistent part in the soap opera Look for Tomorrow. However, despite their work, finances were tight. It belonged to Clayburgh. Father, who provided them with covert support, providing monthly financial assistance that maintained preventing the pair from collapsing under the burden rising rents in New York and the unpredictability cadence of performing roles. February 1969, Pacino sprang once more with his Don Peterson's Broadway debut in Das at Belasco. Tiger Wears a Necktie. Even so, the play ended after Jew's 39 shows. Critics highlighted out Get Him Out. Something living was present. There was an electrifying quality about him. Pacino received a Tony Award a month later in April, a prize for his work. An acknowledgement had solidified his status as one of the greatest talented young performers from his generation, that had signaled the start of a lifetime passion for the theater. He received another Tony Award in the 1970s for the simple Pavla Hamel's instruction and addressed Shakespeare with passion, performing third title role in the third installment of Richard. His performance in David in the 1980s, Smamouth received a prize for his American Buffalo. Nomination for drama. Additionally, even as his movie career flourished, he consistently returned to Aida, coming back in subsequent decades for release of Huey, Oscar by Eugene O'Neill, Kessler's and Wilde's Salimio. He put himself to the test on stage. Himself, where the passion for words and pure performance was felt even when it was not profitable. Although his first residence was a theater, and he filmed slowly, started to take him. His initial screen made its debut in 1969 with a tiny part in Me Natalie, a self-sufficient film in which Patty Duke stars. It was a brief, nearly imperceptible moment, but it was an attempt to get entry. The pivotal moment came in 1971 when He portrayed a drug addict in Jeritha Panic in Needle Park in Schatzburg. The position required tenacity and Pacino provided the level of accuracy that attracted instant focus from filmmakers and both critics. By that time, he had also partnered with Creative Management Associates, an agency for talent that saw his potential and encouraged him farther into the cinematic realm. Those years were filled with hardship and unexpected discoveries. Pacino remained getting his bearings, negotiating between off-Broadway shows as well as minor components for televisions, backed by the generosity of others as well as his own unwavering dedication to taking action. However, each second from the small theaters in Boston to Broadway's stages, from New York's streets to an Italian event, helped to mold the performer who would soon change Hollywood. His route was not based on ease, but on perseverance, love, and faith in the art. Every role bringing him nearer to the unusual profession that was just around the corner. His moment of breakthrough, as soon as Francis Ford Coppola took the bold choice to put located at the heart of Thine 1972, Godfather was a risk that not many people in Hollywood backed it. The studio had been advocating for more well-known names. Jack Warren Beatty, Robert Redford, Nicholson and Robert De Niro, who was just starting out, were thought about. But Coppola noticed something. Pacino is different. For a lot of CEOs, the decision seemed dangerous, even careless. However, Coppola's conviction demonstrated he identified in Pacino thesalent intensity and the profundity of a persona that has the power to change Mickle from a reluctant outsider. Corleo became in teeth powerful leader of a criminal family. The movie became a phenomenon, turning into more than just a box office success, but a landmark in culture. Pacino's performance, overflowing and tightly bound with repressed feelings, drew immediate acnot from audiences and review. The Academy recognized him with a nomination. However, it was marked as not the lead, but a supporting actor. This Pacino was moved by the decision, and who was aware that he had far greater screen time compared to Marlon Brando, who received recognition as star performer. Pacino objected and refused to go to the event, displaying or decide a declaration regarding his perspective on his work and its role in the movie. Remarkably, Brando himself additionally boycotted the occasion, but with good reason. Connected to his personal political beliefs, Pacino continued to gain speed. He shared the screen the next year with Scarecrow's Gene Hackman, a silent, unprocessed road footage that showed Decalenge's and two-way friendship rift. Although it was rather distant from The Godfather's majesty, the Pacino's performance served to highlight his, and the movie itself received Cannes Palme d'Or, a symbol of respect on a global scale. In the same year, he gave a fiery performance in assuming the role of a police officer in New York City named Frank Serpico, who put everything on the line to revel pervasive corruption in the military. Received another Academy Award for the part. Nomination for an award. Now is the ideal time. Actor and solidified his standing as any one of his most captivating abilities. Then, in 1974, Pacino went back to the Corleone household in the Part 2 of Godfather. The film that generated a great deal of controversy over him, De Niro as well. However, this was not your typical situation. Sequel. It turned into the initial follow-up movie to take home the Best Academy Award. Pacino, who is now fully in charge of as Michael descended, he gave a keenly restrained performance. His Michael appeared darker, colder, and more vicious than ever, a change that some detractors would refer to as one of the purest film paintings depicting a heart turning to stone. The Academy paid attention once more. This gives him a third nomination. Time in the category of Finest Actor, at last acknowledging him in the position that had redesigned his career already. In those, Pacino wasn't only a rising star for years. He was changing what a screen was acting might be. His decisions, frequent Leidmanstrat, a dedication that went against the grain. Two positions that required integrity and vulnerability, despite being encased in turmoil of rebellion or power. From their reluctant mafia family heir to then yielding police officer who contested his, Pacino demonstrated that his own brothers in law, repeatedly stating that he wasn't just acting, he resided in his. Additionally, he carved out a location outside of Hollywood, both in the past and in the emotional recollection of viewers around the globe. By the middle, Pacino had emerged as one of the most captivating characters in movies, and he only strengthened that standing with The Afternoon on a Day in 1975. Getting back together with Sidney Lumet, the director who had directed Pacino, portrayed him in Serpico of a desperate man named Sononi Wartza captured in a bank failure in Brooklyn. The performance was unpolished, erratic, and highly sensitive, so human that viewers were unable to look away. The Academy arrived once more, putting him forward for Best Actor, confirming Pacino's status as more than simply dependable but unafraid of his decisions. After 2 years, he changed course, stepping all the way in Bobby Deerfield into a Formula One driver's position directed by Sidney Pollack. A distinct and captivating charm. It started out modestly in eateries, thriving with readings of poetry and hit one-act productions. Two young lads, they are eager for their moment. Everybody forged in the rough, throbbing center of New York scene of acting. They traded names, measured one another before leaving, awaiting anything. Not exactly announced, but both were clearly destined for excellence. Their careers quickly appeared to rise concurrently, imitating one another's ascent to fame. Pacino was rewarded his position alongside the Pantheon in 1972, Godfather, when De Niro gave birth his breakthrough single, Mean Streets, the following year, and left his impact by taking home The Godfather Part 2 won an Oscar in 1974, though taken into consideration for some same parts, particularly Michael Corleo, which eventually ended up with Pacino. De Niro never accepted the notion that a competition. However, his supporters believed that they assumed that it would result in a competition of some kind. Rather, he decided to. At that time, there was little space for resentment in there. Even when circumstances appeared top-lot to prevent them from showing up, they were both eyed for movies together, such as Greenwich Village's Pope in 1900 and Glen Roskilde. However, timing and logistics prevented their routes from coming together. Every close call added texture to their unmet on-screen expectations, creating a sense of almost sweeter than understanding, instead of tension in the gasoline. This brushes with cooperation tempered the story of competition into a respectful one. their friendship became stronger, a uniqueness in a world that wasn't always comfortably create room for sincere communication in the midst of. It was clear that everything regarding them led to competition. Worries, particularly in light of what occurred in part 2 of the Godfather film. The Godfather, the second part, caused debate. I view filmed history so often that Yawold observed that specific features carry a silent magic of sorts. Initially, these particulars might appear to be unimportant, Butari profoundly poetic when considered. 1. In The Godfather, this particular detail of Pacino and Robert De Niro, in part 2 of the best actors in movies, both performing members of the same illustrious, never show up on the screen. Collectively, it seems nearly impossible, considering that the magnetic force is the area to the center of the narrative. However, Francis, this is how Ford Coppola designed it. Purpose. Pacino plays Michael in the late 1950s, a guy who had become the authority and plagued by its price. De Niro assumes the part of a young decades before. Vito Corleone was still establishing an empire and a life in the New York's immigrant streets. These arcs develop concurrently, but never of the movie threading their tales that reverberate through time. Instead of face-to-face interactions, Coppola thought the film would be both a continuation, a contemplation, a story that would contrast with the fall of the son. With the rise of the father, he desired the narrative to demonstrate not only succession but the manner in which aggression, ambition, and loyalty to family can be inherited. Therefore, the choice was not merely a result of scheduling conflicts or an oddity of editing, but a purposeful decision that enhanced the movie's framework. Rather than a father and son standing together in the same space, they live in distinct worlds connected by blood, boots separated into decades. The result is Pacino's icy and icy Michael calculating, sitting in places with low lighting, shrouded in silence as he lets goon humanity and family. Deros Vado, in the meantime, moves through busy neighborhoods of immigrants, his eyes filled with resolutely and optimistically, planting foundations of Michael's empire will eventually inherit, and in many respects, the division results in their presence even more potent. Pacino's performance, instructed with moderation, draws viewers into the loneliness of a man engrossed in his own business. De Niro's job, which is calmer but equal, provides us with the compassion and the strength of a man who constructs something out of nothing. Neither must have a frame in common. Due to the fact that the movie itself is the link that connects them. Two of them, same myth in two parts. A father and son projected as each other's shadows, never heartwarming but always linked. Detractors and historians frequently mention this election as one of the causes of the part 2 of The Godfather is notable in movie. For viewers back then, the understanding that the two did not cross paths on the screen was nearly confusing. Here were two of the most gifted individuals, off-cast in the same movie as their generation, placing their names next to each other on posters and mirrors, but they were never permitted by the camera to coexist. The understanding that De Niro and Pacino, however, never stand by side, filled the same with performances. The movie that spoke with one another through The Godfather Part 2 receives a decades-long distinct resonance. It serves as a reminder of not all stories are about what is revealed, but regarding what is not disclosed. The lack of a common scene does not lessen their influence. It intensifies it. Vito by De Niro establishes the groundwork. Michael, played by Pacino, wears the crown, a burden. When combined, they produce Eric's generational portrait that the gaps are practically palpable to viewers. Where they may have shared life experiences. If one were to inquire, did Pacino and De Niro don't actually cooperate in part 2 of The Godfather? The response is indeed. The frames were never the same. However, Coppola gave that absence as a gift of movie, a choice that changed what might have been a typical group moment into a meaningful fragment of design of narratives. However, to feed everyone's incentive in the film, something occurred that supported our theories. Cinema was revolutionized by the coffee table. It's amusing that the first actual encounter over the two legends took place in a piece of a restaurant in Beverly Hills. No helicopters, only coffee, cutlery made of stainless steel, and two men who they saw themselves in the other. 2 decades later, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, like twin stars, they circled one another in the same galaxy from a movie, admired, mythologized, and contrasted. Then, Michael Mann at Cape Mantilini, they were seated in Thelety at night and allow silence to do their feet lifting. Heat at the time. 1995 transforms from a perfect crime image into a nearly sensitive one. A confessional for two professionals who are unable to give up the only lives they know. The icons conveyed a message for the first time, frame, and the electrical component is integrated in Tet Film's DNA. A man sets up the meeting like it's destiny. Two persons who ought to be adversaries conversing as if they were old friends, not since they've previously met, but since they comprehend one and the scene is important. Almost all of the heat was shot on location. Over 95% of them in Los Angeles, and Cape Mantilini was selected for this deal. A genuine eatery that gave the scene an organic closeness. You can sense the buzz of a room after hours. The gentle reverberation of cups, clinking glass and tile. It is almost unshowy. Stern. That self-control allows every the half smile and quick look read like a portion of the magic in the scenario is how man got it. He employed severe. 3 perspectives were used to train on table to allow the actors to perform without being concerned about making marks for coverage that provided the discussion with Arhith that is organic and a little erratic. Vincent, Hannah and Pacino leaning forward like a caffeine-fueled investigator as well as adrenaline. Neil Macaulay of De Niro withdrawing into a serene, nearly monastic economy of motion. The man desired the unplanned nature of a genuine first encounter. So rehearsals were minimal for him. Mans and the cast's accounts of their years highlight how purposefully new they retained it, even mentioning the decision to steer clear of a formal run-row. In addition to the rivalry problem that was resolved following a while, De Niro has documented danged in disputes that nearly brought his name down to the dirt. The disputes around De Niro. The name Robert De Niro carries the burden of a lengthy, accomplished career, but additionally, it is woven through a few storms in the public eye that show how a complex life in the spotlight can be. These incidents don't take away a lifetime of labor. However, each one provides a peek at the human chaos underneath the court battles that became private tech complaints into viral headlines and truths that needed to be removed by investigative journalists and direct political speeches that caused disagreements. Captured, they collaborate to draw a portrait of an actor who is as obstinately vocal and ferociously private despite his admiration. Though the longest-running court dispute started when the longtime executive assistant to De Niro in 2019, he and his business were sued, claiming discrimination based on gender, revenge as well as a hostile workplace. The assertion contained vivid charges regarding behavior on the job and unfair treatment, which led to a brutal altercation in the courtroom that lasted years. De Niro retaliated with his own refutation of assertions, accusing the assistant of misappropriating business cash and violating faith. Additionally, the two parties engaged in intense trading charges as the trial progressed. When the jury's verdict was rendered late, it discovered the producing company in 2023 accountable for prejudice and granted the plaintiff payment while the jury was clear. De Niro is not personally responsible